Welcome to our evaluation. Today we'll be doing question 6, which is technologies we use throughout our
editing process.
So, first one we used was Photoshop, which we used in the prelim when we did our OP self-portrait. And what we did was we took a picture of ourselves using the camera on the Mac, and then we imported it into Photoshop, and then we started to edit. So we basically we would take a tone of the skin, and then we would blur that so the face would look all one colour, and then we did the background and so on until it was all kind of cartoonerised. Back then the photo that we did, it wasn't brilliant because we hadn't used Photoshop that much before. So then what we went on to do
was we used it again for a poster. And we did this by taking a screenshot of a scene from our final product or prelim, and we then imported it to Photoshop and started to edit it by adding the title of it, ratings and age rating of it. This was quite simple to do, although there were some difficulties with importing pictures onto it, but eventually we did get it working.
Yeah, the brilliance with Photoshop is it does allow you to kind of edit high resolution photos and get them to a standard that you want. So I remember when I did mine, I didn't use Photoshop because with it being Photoshop, you've got to pay for it. And at home I use something called Paint.net, which is it's Photoshop in a sense, but it's for Windows-based operating systems, and it works much nicer. So when I was importing stuff, I didn't have issues with that, and I was familiar with the way it works and things like that. So at the basis, Photoshop does have some limitations. I remember when Tom, our group member, he tried to resize a photo, and he couldn't resize it in Photoshop that well, whereas in Paint.net you can just highlight it and then just drag it.
There was also the problem with when you first loaded it up, you had to change the size of it, and sometimes it would be too big or too small, so then we'd have to resize the photo, and that would eventually cause it to look blurry or and not look high quality.
Yeah, that is one of the problems with Photoshop. You've got to set up your page that you're using, and you've got to know your kind of pixels, and you've got to know how many pixels there are across an A4 sheet and down an A4 sheet. And if you don't know that, you've got to kind of look it up, and it takes more time. So that was Photoshop. I don't think there's much more for that, was there?
No.
Final Cut Pro was one of the software that we used to edit our film. Now there was a choice that we could use. We could use iMovie or Final Cut. And previously I had used iMovie, and it was a bit limited because you couldn't really add titles very well. You could, but it wasn't really. It was preset. It wasn't. You couldn't really customize them and stuff. So so when we did this one, I thought it would be a better idea to use Final Cut. Now, so after we did all of our we got our footage in, we put it into iMovie Final Cut. What I did was I managed to have a little look around and play with it and see what all the different kind of tools were. So you could change the contrast of the photo, so you can change the levels like green, red and blue. You can change all them. You can make it black and white and stuff like that, which is really handy because we were doing a
noir film, so that would suit for black and white images.
Yeah, because we were doing the noir, I thought it would be a brilliant idea to kind of use the black and white sepia to symbolise kind of flashbacks, which was really effective with the transitions. Now the transitions, I used a flash for the flashbacks, which worked really well. But most of all, I used blurs. There's little subtle dissolved blurs which would make the scene it would kind of link the two scenes better together than there would just be one scene and the next with no transition. So I thought that was okay. It was plain, it was simple, it was effective, and it worked. Now, so I did the transitions throughout, and then towards the end of the film we needed to put some titles in. Now there's loads and loads of titles we could have used, so we decided to go with like just a plain title font, but I'm thinking of doing black and white for the titles, or the same colour as we used for our logo, which was red and black, which is kind of symbolic of the noir film. So when we used Final Cut, we were obviously thinking of this video, so because we're going to add like a footage overlay. Now the problem was when we used QuickTime Player with Final Cut, it started to crash.
It was very difficult to import the screen grabs that we recorded of us using each program, and when we did put it into Final Cut, over a period of time it did end up crashing Final Cut.
And that's had a knock-on effect, so now whenever I do load up our big movie, it won't render it and it won't load it and it won't do anything, which is going to be a problem for later on. But let's not worry about that. So overall Final Cut was a really good piece of software. It was, because I've used iMovie, it was much better than iMovie. There was much more techniques, there was much more things you could use.
Much more customization.
And you could, like Alex says, you can customise it to what end you want, which really just allows that personal level towards your film. So that was Final Cut. Now, another piece of software we used was, it's exclusive to the Mac, and that was GarageBand, it's a software that you can use to create your own kind of songs, which was what we needed to do to create like a
noir type soundtrack.
Exactly. So I did 2 songs on GarageBand. We did like a running theme to build up suspense for the kind of what's going to happen next in our running scene, and I did a kind of theme tune for when the titles are on. Now, it was good in that sense, but it did have some limitations.
And this was things like when you were making your soundtrack, it was difficult to make those soundtracks from scratch due to the fact that you could only use each clip over and over and over again. And there was also another problem with the variety of sounds for each clip. So at first we did want to use saxophone for our soundtrack, but there was only 3 types of sounds that we could use for the saxophone, so we had to scrap that idea and change it to something else.
The idea behind the saxophone was one of the conventions of noir is kind of a saxophone kind of style theme tune. So I found it quite difficult to kind of make a unique set with a unique kind of set of music to which is unique to our film, because obviously some other people in our class were kind of using the same kind of using that same kind of saxophone loop, which kind of, you know, it doesn't give that personality towards your film. Once we'd finished creating the track, so I put the loops in, put some beats in, put a kind of guitar background on, and made the jazz saxophone kind of style throughout. Once I'd done all that, I found it really easy to export it as a MP3 file, which we could import straight into Final Cut. Now that just went straight on straight away, and there was no difficulty with that. So that was probably the best part of GarageBand, that you can just create a song, any song that you want, and then you can just export it straight away, and you can just put it on Final Cut or any other program you want. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. On the internet, we use like a wide variety of websites to kind of illustrate our film. So first of all, we used Blogger to post our updates and how we were doing with our film and what kind of research we were doing with that.
It was like the main hub for our film and work that we've done for this project.
Now Blogger was good. It was really good in the sense that it did what it says in the tin. It's a blog. You can upload and just share your findings on Blogger. Now, when it does kind of come to uploading like work, like Microsoft Word stuff on there and PowerPoint, it kind of hindered a bit there, because when you when you wanted to put an embed code on, you could do that, that's fine, but if you had an animation within PowerPoint or Word or whatever, it wouldn't work. So it kind of has limitations there, but that could be SlideShare, which is my next point. SlideShare allows you to basically just upload Word documents, PowerPoints and videos onto the website. It'll give you an embed code which you can then put on a Blogger, which we use throughout, obviously.
There wasn't really any downsides to using SlideShare that we found out. The only sort of downside I could think of was just like uploading it. When you had to upload it, you had to like state what it was and have a description, and really I didn't really feel the need to put any of that in at all.
Yeah, that was a bit rubbish. Now, going back to Blogger, I would kind of compare Blogger to Weebly, which is another kind of blog website. Now, Blogger would allow you to have infinite pages, and what else would it? It was infinite pages. It would allow you to have like infinite posts and just things like that. Now, when we're using Weebly, we're currently using Weebly to do our evaluation questions on. So what the plan was to use Weebly, but when I found out that you can only have a certain amount of pages, we kind of stuck to the 3 or 4 pages that we could use, and we used an embed code with Padlet. Now, so if we were going to do a blog, I wouldn't use Weebly because you've got to pay to use infinite pages, and so I've come back to Blogger, but there was limitations there because the posts, it wasn't really well laid out when posting things on. You couldn't just move things to where you want, you know, you had to kind of, you could center it, put it at the left or put it at the right, or you could kind of change the HTML code to do that. So it wasn't that good. So coming back to Weebly and Padlet, now because Weebly only had so many pages, we're putting all of our evaluation questions on a Padlet. Now Padlet was really good because you can just put anything all over Padlet on the page. And also, I found this out yesterday, you could just upload straight from a file. Like, we were doing a presentation, PowerPoint presentations on media institutions for question 2 or 3. And it just went straight in. Like, it just uploaded, it took about 2 seconds to do, and that was brilliant. So that's one of the good things about Padlet. Now, bad things is, if you wanted to kind of show a flow chart, like this is how we start and this is where we end, like a timeline, you can't really do that with Padlet because it's got quite a few limitations. Also, you can't, with Padlet, we wanted to kind of show convention, and we wanted to show the kind of how, when we used Padlet for the genre convention, so we wanted to show how each convention were it's kind of related to film noir and horror noir thrillers. So we wanted to use a background which kind of
represented our genre.
But when we came to do that, there's only a set kind of amount of pixels you can use. So it was like 2144 by like 900, and it was very hard to find an image that corresponded to our genre with them pixels. So, and I did find one eventually, but it didn't work. It wouldn't let me upload it with it being Google, which is quite dodgy that way. So we had to use a preset theme, and there was not many themes to use, and it was very limited that way.
Yeah.